Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We are here for another Accounting Art podcast, and with me is Doug. And Doug, I'm going to ask you to actually go ahead and introduce yourself so that I don't secure anything, because you've done so many different things.
I can't keep track myself. So my name is Doug Slaybaugh. I am a CPA, but I am also a professional coach. So I went to school for a couple of years to learn about coaching, and then I had to take a bunch of tests, and I got certified as a coach, and I've got credentials as a coach. So I'm a legitimate coach as I am CPA. And I've been in public accounting my entire career. My dad was in public accounting. So I've basically been in public accounting my entire life to some degree. And nowadays I work with CPAs, accountants, executive accountants across the country. I work with all kinds of sizes of firms. I work with the local universities, and I reach out and support students through mentorship. And, I speak at like Beta Alpha Psi, or talk in the classroom, or help them prepare for Meet the Firms. And I'm involved in the state society and building a coach network. I'm on boards of stuff, and I like to read, and I like to play Scrabble with my wife. I usually lose a lot. And I've got two kiddos. I got a 17 and a 14. They're amazing. And that's me.
That's really cool. Well, you said coach, and I see the helmet up on your bookshelf.
Yes.
So when you say coach, are you talking football coach here? What are we coaching?
I am not talking football coach, although I've been a baseball coach and a basketball coach for a long time, until my son decided he didn't want to play anymore, which was the best and worst day, because it was the best because I didn't have to coach anymore, and the worst because he didn't play those sports anymore. But that's another story for another time. So I am what you would call a work coach. So you've probably heard of a life coach. And, a life coach is helping someone navigate their life, maybe a transformation, or going through, a period of change, or really wanting to get their life in order. And I'm more on that work side. So I'm really there to help accountants primarily, help them in their work, be better in their jobs, figure out their careers and where they want to go with them, help them get promoted, help them get out of trouble, help them in their businesses. But then at the same time, there is no such thing as work without life. So, even though I'm this work coach, life always comes in and has an influence on the work that we do. And so I'm the guy they call to help you improve your performance in your career, and also help you generally throughout anything that you're going through. But work is my focus.
I like that. You brought up the whole concept of work and life, and I'm going to throw this one in. What do you think of this whole concept of work-life balance that everyone talks about?
Well, the current news, as I'm sure you've read, is it's a myth, right? Like, there's no such thing as work-life balance. Well, I think at the time when work-life balance became such a sexy thing, I think there was a lot of emphasis on segregating those two things and keeping them separate, and one ends and another begins. I think with the advent of technology and just the way we run our lives now, it's really hard to say when you're stopping and starting anything these days. And so to me, the word is integration, which I'm sure you've heard too, but work-life integration, where you're just able to maneuver in your life, which includes work, in a way that satisfies you. And the key with work-life balance or integration is there's no right answer. Right? Like, each of us have our own idea about what that is. Some, like to really keep some distance from work on the weekends, and some like to wake up on Saturday morning and read some, or dabble, or be creative around their work, and that's okay with them. So it's up to the individual, but integration is the word I'm hearing now.
Totally with you on that. I've been calling it work-life integration for, I think, over 10 years already, because I agree. I was one of those. I'm like, it's not about balance, because I love what I do. And I do things that are work related even in my free time because I'm so passionate about what we're doing. So we use words like traditional accountant and non-traditional accountant. You're definitely in the non-traditional category, but
Mm.
can you tell us a little bit more of how you came to be doing this?
So I was a big firm. So I was at a firm called Arthur Anderson, which is no longer. I left Arthur Anderson. I actually went and ran a construction company for a couple of years after that, and had a great time, but it wasn't for me. And my wife was kind of a high heels girl, and she didn't really fit into the mountains as much as I'd liked her to, or as she would have liked to. And so we left and came back to a big city. I worked at Price Waterhouse for a couple of years. Turns out, I didn't get along with them too much. They didn't like me too much, so I didn't last long. And then I went to a big regional firm that ultimately got bought by Plan Moran. And in this regional firm, I became an audit partner. And so I'm one of the few people. I don't know. I might be the only one, but I got promoted from senior to manager to senior manager to signing senior manager to partner in 5 years. I was extremely driven in my career as a public accountant, and I had a lot of luck along the way. Don't get me wrong, but I was driven to get to that partner seat, and I got to it. And I spent about a decade there. And during that time, I ran a coaching program for the firm. So I made sure that like 600 people learned how to coach or be coached. Now, I'd never taken a class or read a book on coaching. I just was naturally empathetic and compassionate. So it gave me those skills. But I really liked it a lot. And I found out that I liked it so much that I decided to stop signing audit reports. And I left the firm in 2016 and I started the CPA Coach, which is what I am now. And so I walked out of the firm. I gave over all my clients to someone else. I signed my resignation letter and I walked out the door and I made this much money on the Friday. And then on Monday, I made, like you can't even see. It gets beyond the camera. Like I made no money. And my wife, bless her, she knew that this was something I was passionate about. She knew it was something I was good at, and she knew I was doing it for the right reasons. And so she was very supportive of me. And so for the last 8.5 years or so, 9 years or so, I've been building a coaching practice and supporting accountants all across the country in various ways. My purpose at the end of the day is to improve the experience of public accounting for accountants. And it's something that resonates with me. It's something that gets me excited. Every day I get to talk to accountants and help them with whatever they're going through. And I've become pretty good at a lot of the things they go through. And that's what I get to do now. So yeah, non-traditional is probably the right way to call it.
Love it. And improving the profession is part of our core here, is purpose as well here at the Center for Accounting Transformation.
Yeah.
I can tell you're talking so passionately about your work. What do you find so invigorating or exciting? Can you share some examples perhaps?
Here's the deal. Like accountants, like they have some nuances. They are people pleasers. They love to help others. They love to work hard at the risk of their own health sometimes. They love to get uncomfortable, and sometimes they like to get too comfortable. And there's such a unique stereotype or caricature. And I just know that there's so many ways that they can be different in their careers and lives. And now that doesn't include everyone, but there's just a lot of them of that variety out there. And a lot of them think they know everything. and they're pretty confident that they don't need help. And I'm a very stubborn person. And I love to help the people that don't want help and the ones who think they have it figured out and the ones who are sure that their way is the way that they need to be. And I love being there to help them support their journey to see a different way to be and to create a different type of life than they otherwise would have. A lot of industries, they don't have as many of this type of character in them. You go to tech or you go to PE or you go to oil and gas or you go to other places, you just don't find the same challenge and you don't find the same folks who need that support as much as I found it in accounting. And so, my job is to be there when they need it or when they don't too.
When you said you don't find these types of characters, I was like, I found a lot of characters for RE and IT, but you mean character like character integrity and
sure
this dedication.
Oh, they're just wonderful people, and they give so much of themselves in their lives to their profession, and that's great. But my job is to help them have both, where they're able to give as much as they do their profession as well as their lives. And I want to create that integration where they're able to settle into a career that they can sustain, and that they can be, thriving in and find their own purpose in. You asked for some stories. So like, I'll help like a partner who's been in public accounting for 20 plus years leave, and leave before retirement, leave because they're interested in doing something else, either in accounting or otherwise. I'll help the individual who just can't make partner because they don't have that executive presence that's required, or I'll help the one who's awfully stubborn about the way they treat other people, and build their emotional intelligence so that they're better working with clients and their teams. That's the kind of stuff that I get to do on a daily basis. And most of my work, 98% of my work is one-on-one. And so I'm focused on the individual that's on the screen with me or in person with me. And that's all that matters to me, is this individual. And that's what I get to do.
Love it. I love it. I ended up doing some graduate work in organizational development, which is really a lot of psychology in organizations. And all this stuff really gets me excited because you really get to see that impact on people themselves rather than just the company or the accounting or the financial statements.
Totally.
Speaking of backgrounds, what was it about accounting that drew you first to the profession, and how did you actually start in accounting? You gave us kind of real quick, but if you can maybe tell us a little more, like audit, tax, how did you decide, that kind of stuff.
It's not going to be quick, so I'm just going to say sorry up front.
You're good.
So I liked math when I was in high school, so I figured engineering would be a great course for me to kind of steer into. And what I found out was, I liked math, but I wasn't as good at math as I thought I was. And that was one thing. The other thing was, my high school, my graduating class was like 44, 46 kids in my graduating senior class. And I went to this big University of Colorado, and there's 20,000 some kids running around. I got hit with a giant dose of culture shock. Like, these kids were doing things I'd never heard of, or maybe I'd seen movies about, but never participated in these things. I mean, some of them healthy, not so much some other things that I was doing and getting involved in my freshman year of college. But, I have a record maybe of advancing in public accounting. I also have a record for possibly the lowest GPA ever scored by a partner in public accounting. I had a 0.76 my freshman year of college, and they don't just hand those out, right? Like, you got to work hard to get a 0.76. Like, you really got to not show up, and you really got to skip those tests. So I did. And so I got a 0.76 my first semester. My second semester, I almost got a 2.0, and I needed a 2.0, and they kicked me out. They said, get out of school, you're gone. And so I got booted out of the university. I spent the summer trying to get my grades back up, and I did. But I very quickly decided engineering was not for me. And since my dad was an accountant, and because he told me what a lot of accountants heard, which was get into accounting and you can find a job anywhere, I heard that and I said, well, okay, well, that's probably safe. So let's go into accounting. And so I went into accounting. I did okay. I mean, I did better than I did in engineering. I got my grades up somewhat, my GPA somewhat, but my GPA was never above a 3.0. I think I was floating around a 2.7, 2.8, which, you may know, but it's hard to get the attention of a firm when your GPA is below a 3.0. So I had stories. It's what I had. I had stories. I had stories of my 0.76. I had stories of me being resilient and sticking with it and getting back into school. I had stories of this character that's talking to you, and a little bit of an introvert, but actually somewhat extroverted as well. Meet the Firms was like on a Tuesday, and I didn't know. I didn't put it on my calendar. I was playing basketball, and I was walking back from the gym, basketball in hand, shorts, tank top, and I saw one of my buddies running by with a suit on. And I was like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm going to meet the firms. I said, meet the who? He said, meet the firms. That's where all the accounting firms come together and they give you internships. And I said, oh, is this going on for a couple of days? He's like, no, it's about another hour and then it's over. There was no chance I was going to get home, dress, shower, come back and make it to meet the firm. So I walked right in with my basketball and my shorts and my tank top. I was the only one in the entire gymnasium or whatever this convention center. And I locked eyes with this woman at Arthur Anderson. She was a recruiter and she saw me coming, and you could just see her brain just like, what is this? I can't wait to hear this story. And so I walked right up to her, and I had stopped at the computer lab to print out a resume at least. And so I handed her my resume and I said, now, before you look at the GPA, I've got some stories to tell. And I started to share with her my experience, and I started to share with her, how important it was that I got back into school, and I'm never going to get my GPA hard enough, but I'm a hard worker, and and I worked during school, so I had some other things on my resume besides just school that helped. But she gave me a shot. She listened to the stories. She said, "Okay, you know what? We usually don't let someone in with a 2.7 or 2.8, but we'll let you interview." And I interviewed, and that was the only interview I got. And I got my internship with Arthur Anderson, and the rest is kind of this.
Well, I think you told some of the rest of that to you got to partner and then you came out of that and now you're doing this coaching. So continue the story there. How did you actually come to do this coaching? Like what kind of background? Do you just do it? Because you mentioned you were doing some of it in the firm and yeah, continue from there. If someone
Yeah.
wants to end up being a coach, what does it actually take? Is it education? Do I just self-study? Is there a test like the CPA exam?
If you grabbed a pool of 100 public accountants and you asked them the question, why do you stay in public accounting? Or what causes you to stay in the profession you're in? 90% of them are going to say, because I get to work with people, or I get to develop people, or I have relationships with people. And so it was such a strong thing naturally. But I have this like superpower of empathy and compassion that it means the world to me that I help others. And in the firm, I had this giant group of, seniors and staff and managers that I got to help, and, maybe help them get to partner. I never took credit for it, but I'd help them along the way, or I'd help them through a tough spot in their lives, or, something hard happened, or they got bad feedback, or the client issue that caused them a lot of concerns, and I was able to support them with it. And I honestly, I kind of became like addicted to it. Like it just became the thing I craved. I just craved to help and develop others. And I didn't care as much about the audits anymore. Like I did the audits because I had to. It's like a MacGuffin. I don't know if you know what a MacGuffin is, but it's like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the movie's not about the ark. The movie's about the adventure. And for me, public accounting wasn't about the accounting and the auditing. It was about developing people. That was the adventure for me. And so I just became so in tune with that and so passionate about that. It just became the thing I was addicted to. Now, the problem was, I only had so many people in the firm that I could work with. And I also had a bit of an agenda and a bias. Like I wanted to make sure these people stayed in the firm. I wanted to make sure that they didn't leave my job and go somewhere else. I wanted to make sure that, that I just had a bias. But when I let go of the firm and I just became the CPA coach, the only thing I'm worried about now is the individuals I work with. I'm not necessarily worried about the firm or whether they hit their BD goal or whether they're on my audit engagement or not. I just care about them. And so ultimately that's what led me to leave and do this. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's
you told us why you do it. So now I'm curious, what kind of do you need education? Do you have to pass a test?
Yeah.
Like if someone wanted to do what you're doing, what do they need? What do they need to do?
Yeah. So there's like 1,000 coaching schools out there. All right. And like every coach thinks that they can teach someone else to be a coach. And so they start a school. But there's a couple of really well-known entities that coach or teach coaching. And I picked one of like two or three that were the biggest and the best. And it was called CTI, Coaches Training Institute. And so I started going on weekends. So I was, auditor by week and then coachee or future coach on the weekends. And then I'd fly somewhere and I'd take another weekend course, and I'd fly somewhere else and take another weekend course. And I kept taking all these classes on the weekends. And then they said, okay, great, you passed. And then they moved me into like a cohort where I'm working with a bunch of other coaches and developing our skills. And then I have to pass an ethics exam. Then I have to pass a real exam. Then I have to demonstrate live coaching. And then they give you a little certificate that says you passed and you're a coach. And then there's an entity like the AICPA, but it's called the ICF, the International Coach Federation, which actually is kind of very much like the AICPA. It monitors those coaches and make sure they're getting education and ethics training, coaching and experienced hours. And that allowed me to get certified. So, and I read a lot of books you'll see behind me. I mean, I've got books all over the place about coaching and about development and about performance. So a lot of it is self-study that I've done over the years. But the biggest thing that's attributed to where I'm at today is just experience. I'm closing in on 10,000 hours of coaching CPAs or accountants, which by some would say that would make me an expert, but I don't know about that. I'm still learning every day. But it's not for the faint of heart being a coach, because I meet people in very tough spots. And so, I'm on a roller coaster every day, depending on where my clients are at, and I just get to ride it with them.
That can be fun.
Yeah, some days not so much.
I want to call out something you mentioned, because you mentioned ethics in coaching, and I don't think a lot of people are familiar with that. What is ethics in coaching?
So first of all, you should know this. Coaches, they can be a dime a dozen. There's a lot of coaches out there that don't have education because there's no barriers to entry. There's nothing that says that anyone can call themselves a coach at any time. But because of who I was targeting with my coaching, the CPA, I wanted to put a real legitimacy behind what I was doing. I wanted to put credentials, just like a CPA. I wanted to have the study, just like the CPA, a test, just like the CPA. But there are ethics. There are certain things that I don't do with clients. Like if they start talking about their past, and if they start talking about, they need to heal from things that occurred to them when they were younger or as they grew up, or they've got trauma. They've got certain things that are outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not qualified to help people heal. I'm qualified to help people where they're at and move forward in the direction they want to go in a way that really supports their best interests. So my ethics tell me when a client starts talking about certain things, I have to put up a wall and say, hey, I love that you're bringing this up, and this is very important to you. I can tell, and there's someone you need to talk to, and I'm not that person. I'd love to be that person, but I'm not. Confidentiality is a big thing in coaching. When a coach meets with me and one of my clients, what we say and what we talk about is ours. It's no one else's. Even if the firm is paying for me to coach them, the firm doesn't get to hear or see or be a part of the work that I do with my coachees. And the only way that is allowed is if the coachee wants to involve the firm in the work that we're doing, which of course I'll grant that permission, but otherwise it's confidential. So those are kind of like the two big things. There's a lot of other little nuances about, conflicts of interest, making sure that there's agreement between the coach and coachee on what the work will be, stuff like that. But those are the two big ones.
Definitely sounds like some great parallels over to our standards of practice over on the CPA realm.
Big time.
One of the big things we're doing with this is that we really view a lot of us in the accounting profession as agents of transformation. And sometimes people say, well, we're really heroes. And you've actually already told us your superpowers, which you said were empathy and compassion. How do you use those powers of empathy and compassion? Can you give us an example?
A client last week sent me an email to let me know that they were not going to be funded anymore. And so their parent was basically shutting them down. And, I got that email in an afternoon, and it changed my evening, because now I'm thinking about them. I'm feeling what they're going through. And, we actually weren't even working together anymore. Like we had finished our contract and didn't have any coaching left. But, on this past Monday, I spent an hour with her talking about her plans and what she's going to do next and how we're going to navigate this. And, that hour was on me, and allowed me to be there for her and support her in a time when she really needed it. I've had another client that went through an anxiety attack. And, in that type of a situation, there's only certain things I can or can't do. I know my lane, but, I show up for them and I send them emails or I send them texts and check in on them. And how are you doing today? And did you do the exercises we talked about today? And how's tomorrow looking? Another client that he's working on his health. We had a burpee challenge, and every morning he'd wake up and do however many burpees, and I'd had to do as many as he did. So we had a competition up until the point he hurt his back, and then he stopped doing burpees. But it's that kind of stuff. Like I am a part of their lives, and I'm supporting them as best as I can, and I'm able to while they let me. And, there's a point in time in which, it might get weird if I keep bugging them over too long of a period of time. But when they're a client of mine, I get to exercise those superpowers every day.
See that, I can see that, and I can see how that can really have a huge impact.
Mhm.
Let me flip my question. So if those are your superpowers, what is your critical vulnerability? What's your kryptonite?
Airports is one. I can't stand airports because I can't control the situation. You could show up 2 hours beforehand, you could have all your documents, you'd be ready to go, and you're going to get to the plane and they're going to say, no, we're not taking off. You got to go home. And just having that sense of dread of, it doesn't matter what happens. I could completely get kicked off of this or not make this flight and mess up my whole vacation. That's one. Traffic is another, especially drivers that cut other drivers off, and not necessarily me. But like if I see one driver cut off another driver, like something happens inside of me, and I just like, I don't know why, but I want to chase them down and I want to like swerve in front of them and cut them off. And I don't know, but that's something I have to work on. That's one of the things. And then the other thing is unplanned visits. Like I do really well when I know that someone's coming this weekend to stay with us, and I can prepare mentally and I can get the house ready, and then they show up and it's welcome and have a great weekend. But if I find out Friday afternoon as I'm pulling into the driveway that someone's car is there and I didn't expect to see that car, I start losing my stuff. So those are my kryptonites.
Oh, interesting. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen too often. And exactly that, right? We all kind of have our little idiosyncrasies.
Well, this is kind of unfair because I really want to ask you some of these questions right back.
Well, actually, what you can do is you can go watch my video because I talked about it on my video.
Okay.
So how's that?
All right. I'll do that. That's fair. I'll do that.
One last question on all of this is really, you volunteered to be a part of this, and what would you say to anyone else, any colleagues or anyone else in the profession, not the student side, the practitioner side, what would you say to them about participating in something like this?
I'd say this, there's been a lot of news about the pipeline and, a lot of effort put into supporting, students, younger generations, and entering and staying in this profession. And I think my peers, my cohorts, my clients, the folks that I get to work with on a regular basis, they have a real opportunity to influence that pipeline. And all it takes is just a little bit of time just to sit down and talk to these generations and see what they need and what they're feeling and support them. Take those extra minutes. I had partners when I was younger coming up that would spend time with me, and it made a world of difference just by feeling, that interest and care in me and my profession and in my career. It just made all the world of difference to me. And that's one of the first seeds that were planted on how important it is that this is a people business. And we have to remember that from time to time, and we have to take the time to care for one another. And so that would be the message I'd probably put out there, is just take the time to care for each other.
I love that. And that I always think is one of the big differentiators of our profession, that we really do care about each other, and the mentorship and coaching that you get, informal coaching that you get from everyone, is so astounding. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the way to contact you?
It's easy to find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Doug Slaybaugh. You can find me at coach.cpa at my website. And those are the two primary ways to get a hold of me. You can email me at doug@thecpacoach.com. Again, that's doug@thecpacoach.com. And those are the best ways.
Well, thank you again, Doug, for being on our podcast today.
Thank you.
And I hope the rest of you, I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you on another episode.
Cheers.
Cheers, Aaron.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.